It was meant to be a quiet family holiday in the French Alps, a final scenic drive through the wooded hills above Lake Annecy. Crisp air, complete silence. But on the afternoon of September 5th, 2012, that silence is shattered. A British family is ambushed on a remote mountain road, the father, mother and grandmother executed inside their car. A local cyclist gunned down nearby. An unintended witness? Or the real target? But which is which? Two little girls survive, one barely clinging to life, the other hidden under her grandmother's body, too terrified to make a sound. It's a methodical killing. No weapon, no warning, no clear motive. Just 4 bodies, 13 bullets, and a case that will pull in police forces from across Europe. But why the massacre? A family feud, business gone bad, espionage, extortion, or something far more ordinary, marital revenge and collateral damage? 12 years on, the mystery holds. I'm Francois, your host, lawyer by trade and true crime investigator by instinct, so pour yourself something warm, settle in, and join me as we delve into one of France's most confounding and expensive investigations. The village of CHEVALINE, nestled in the Haute-Savoie region near Lake Annecy, is the kind of place where life moves slowly, a peaceful corner of France known for its rolling green hills and quiet forests. It is here, on a remote mountain road, that the idyllic stillness is shattered on Wednesday the 5th of September 2012. It's around 3:15 in the afternoon. Retired British RAF pilot William Brett Martin pedals his bicycle along the secluded Combe d'Ir forest path. The crisp alpine air fills his lungs. The only sound is the rhythmic crunch of his tyres on gravel. Another cyclist overtakes him, pedaling hard up the incline. Minutes later, a dark green or maybe black 4x4 rumbles past, followed shortly by a motorcycle disappearing into the trees. The trail narrows as William nears the end of the forest road, the trees closing in overhead. It's now 3:45, and ahead of him presents a vision so surreal that his mind struggles to process it. A young girl, no older than 7, stumbles forward before collapsing onto the road. Just beyond her sits a BMW with its engine running, the wheels spinning helplessly in the dirt. And near it, sprawled on the ground, a man in cycling gear lies still. Wait a second. William, he recognizes this man. It's the very same cyclist that overtook him earlier. Filled with dread, William's attention turns back to the car. His pulse quickens as he moves toward it. Through the window, he sees them. 3 lifeless bodies. A man in the driver's seat, a woman beside him, and an older woman slumped in the back. Their faces are marred by gunfire, their skulls punctured with surgical precision. The child who lies nearby is still alive. The pilot moves swiftly, placing her in the recovery position before scanning the area for help, or maybe danger. Nothing. Whoever did this is long gone. William runs for help. 3 backpackers he intercepts inspect the scene and quickly become suspicious of Williams, who reports having stumbled across the scene of an accident. The shattered glass. The blood splattered across the interior. What a strange thing to say. This is no accident. This is the scene of an execution. Communication problems, no doubt. The backpackers call the police. When the gendarmes arrive, they move cautiously, securing the crime scene, searching for any trace of the killer. The forensic team combs the ground, bagging evidence, marking the positions of bullet casings. Night has by now settled over the alpine forest. Floodlights cut through the darkness, revealing the wreckage of a massacre that leaves the most seasoned officers shaken and some in tears. The sisters are airlifted to separate hospitals, each one placed under armed protection, because in those first few hours, no one knows if the killer is finished. The victims have been identified, 3 members of the Al-Hili family of Iraqi origin. Saad, the father, 50 years old, a British engineer. Iqbal, his wife, 47, a Swedish-Iraqi dentist. And Suhaila al-Alaf, Iqbal's mother, 74, visiting from Sweden for the holidays. All 3 have been executed with 2 bullets to the head. Saad is hit 5 times. As to the cyclist, his name is Sylvain Mollier, 45, a local man from the region, unconnected to the family. Hold on, wait a second. Saad and Iqbal have two daughters, 7 years old. Zainab is recovering in hospital, but where is 4-year-old Zina? A frantic search ensues. Panic turns quickly into consternation because 8 hours after being called to the scene of the crime, the police find little Zina in the back seat of the car, hidden beneath the skirt of her grandmother's lifeless body, alive, staring at the gendarme's flashlight, her tiny frame frozen in terror. The police learn that the Al-Hili family had crossed the Channel a week earlier, taking the late ferry out of the UK on August 29th. Their destination, Haute-Savoie, the mountains, Lake Annecy. It wasn't their first time. In fact, it was a family tradition. For the 3rd year in a row, they'd set up camp at a familiar spot, Village Camping Europa, on the peaceful western shore of the lake. The police further learn that just 2 days into their holidays, they packed up without explanation and moved to another campsite just a few kilometers away, Le Solitaire du Lac. A last-minute change. No warning, no reason. And then, a strange detail. Someone at the campsite remembers seeing Saad locked in an intense conversation with a man in a suit. Not exactly typical campsite attire. Tense, animated, like something serious was being discussed. The investigation begins at pace. 150 police officers are assigned to the case. The Al-Hili family were British, so the British authorities are brought in without delay. At the hospital, 4-year-old traumatized Zina can only remember her dad shouting at Zainab to get into the care, then the thing happened. Zainab, through a translator, confirms the presence of only one bad man, as she would put it. The investigation first focuses on the crime scene itself. The sheer brutality of the killings suggests a professional hit, but the weapon used complicates things. The 1906 Luger P06 pistol, rare and outdated, is more commonly found in the hands of collectors than contract killers. At first glance, it hints at something personal, or perhaps amateurish. But the crime scene tells a different story. The shooter fired 21 rounds in under 90 seconds by one shooter. Calm, controlled, one efficient bad man. Forensic analysis confirms 2 reloads, carried out with precision, no sign of panic. This wasn't improvised. Whoever pulled the trigger acted with intent and composure, the kind of discipline typically seen in military or law enforcement circles. One detail stands out: the shooter's technique. The way the weapon was handled, smooth, exact, suggests a very particular kind of training, not French, not standard, but Swiss, elite, the kind of instruction reserved for specialized units across the border. The geography alone raises the question: did the killer come from Switzerland or disappear into it? The police turn their attention to the identity of the victims. Who were the Al-Hilis? Saad Al-Hili was born in Baghdad in 1962 into a privileged Iraqi family. His father, Kadim, ran multiple factories, part of Iraq's industrial elite. But when Saddam Hussein rose to power, the family's world shifted. One of Saad's uncles was arrested, tortured, mutilated. Kadim decided to flee with his wife and 2 sons, settling in the UK in 1971. They made a new life in Pimlico, an area of central London your Espresso Crime host lived in for a good 10 years. Saad had fully embraced his British identity. He studied mechanical engineering and computer science, fields that suited his precise, analytical mind. Over the years, he carved out a respectable career in aerospace, founding his own company and even contributing to the Airbus A380. At the time of his death, he was working for Surrey Satellite Technology, a firm specializing in civilian microsatellites. Officially, nothing classified. But in an industry where innovation brushes up against national security, eyes are always watching. Still, Saad Al-Hili, with his wife and 2 young daughters, lived in the quiet suburb of Claygate, Surrey, an affluent pocket of the English countryside where footballer millionaires and wealthy professionals lived behind tall hedges and gated driveways. His wife, Iqbal, was also of Iraqi origin. She had lived in Sweden before relocating to the UK after marrying Saad. A trained dentist, fluent in multiple languages, she was known to be intelligent, organized, and fiercely protective of her children. A tabloid reporter uncovers that, before meeting Saad, Iqbal had briefly lived in the United States under the name Kelly, and strangely, had married another man, James Dudley Thompson, only to divorce him just 2 days before marrying Saad, whom she met on a Dubai dating website. That man would later die in Mississippi of, and I quote, an apparent heart attack, and, wait for this, on the same day as the massacre. Also in the list of victims is Iqbal's mother, Suhaila al-Alaf, 74, visiting from Sweden for the summer, and of course the surviving children Zainab, 7. Zina, 4, our real little hero in this story that played dead, hidden beneath her grandmother's legs for 8 hours. Let us not forget the 4th victim. Local French man, Sylvain Mollier. Sylvain was on paternity leave, taking time off to be with his newborn son when fate decided to cut his life short. That afternoon, he was out cycling. Nothing unusual for him, but as you will see, his choice of itinerary will later raise questions. The theories come thick and fast, each one as plausible as elusive. This is the point, dear viewers, where the case begins to splinter. So stay with me, because the path ahead is anything but straight. The family feud theory. First, investigators consider the possibility that the massacre relates to a family feud. Saad al-Hili had a long-standing dispute with his older brother Zaid over their late father's estate. Their father, Kadim, had amassed a small fortune, including multiple businesses and properties across Europe and reportedly undisclosed Swiss bank accounts. The brothers had clashed over access to these assets. Some suspect Saad may have discovered incriminating information against his brother, money hidden, accounts moved, signatures forged. This is more than just speculation, because in the family's holiday caravan, the police find a letter that Saad was in the process of drafting to his brother saying that he had proof the will was forged, that he'd expose him. But Zaid, he maintains his innocence. Zaid refuses to travel to France for police interrogation. He resents the military-like way the French make eye contact when asking questions. He is instead brought in for questioning by the British police and is later arrested in 2013, though he will be released without charge due to lack of evidence. The military precision of the massacre makes the family feud an unlikely motive for a man with no known criminal connections, except that a persistent French police detective uncovers a telephone trail that shows that weeks prior to the shooting, Zaid was in frequent telephone conversation with someone based in Romania, and these conversations suddenly stopped after the 5th September, as though the connection had served its purpose and was no longer needed. Still, this trail runs dry, and to the consternation of many, Zaid is no longer treated as a suspect. The industrial espionage theory. Saad al-Hili's professional life comes under scrutiny too. As a satellite engineer with experience in aerospace and high-spec technology, his background raises red flags. He had worked with Surrey Satellite Technology on civilian microsatellites, but rumours swirl that some of his work may have overlapped with sensitive or dual-use applications. Swiss prosecutors confirm Saad visited a Geneva bank shortly before his death. Was he involved in something more than routine engineering contracts? Could someone have seen him as a threat? There's no hard proof, nothing to suggest intelligence work. But in a world where secrets move quietly between borders, the idea of an assassination disguised as a random attack is never fully ruled out. Even if the reports of Saad's heated argument with this mystery man in a suit would yield no leads either. 3. The Iraqi family feud theory. Then there is the Iraqi connection. In 2004, Saad al-Hili returned to Iraq to reclaim his father's businesses, a chicken factory, a paper plant, and a prime location villa seized during Saddam's regime. But his uncle had taken control of them all and made it clear that he wasn't giving these assets back. Saad left empty-handed that year, but in 2012, the year of his demise, Saad had set plans in motion to repossess what he considered to be his. Under the paradigm, the execution of the entire Saad al-Hili family would conveniently put these plans to bed. Unfortunately, this is a trail of investigation that the French authorities simply cannot follow. The Iraqi rebel insurgency entrained since the withdrawal of US forces makes any sort of inter-country collaboration impossible. The other industrial espionage theory. Then again, perhaps the true target was Sylvain Mollier. His body had absorbed 7 bullets, more than any of the others, as if the killer wanted to be certain he was dead. Forensics experts are also convinced that he was shot first, a shooting sequence that gave little Zina the time to hide under her grandmother's skirt. That scenario would make Molio the intended target, and tragically, the Al-Hili family inconvenient witnesses that needed to disappear. But isn't just another outlandish theory? Well, let's see. Sylvain Mollier, who lived nearby, in the village of Eugène, worked in precision welding of zirconium for a subsidiary of Areva, a company at the heart of the nuclear industry. The police consider whether his position might have given him access to information that could have been valuable to the wrong people. No chance of that. Mollier's colleagues are adamant his position didn't involve any secrets that would warrant such a brutal killing. Besides, Areva isn't the only company with zirconium production expertise. The industrial espionage hypothesis is quickly set aside. The resentful father-in-law theory, the police consider instead a more pedestrian motive for his execution, one tied to an interesting revelation that the cycling route Sylvain Mollier took that day, the road where he was gunned down, had been recommended by his partner's father, Thierry Schultz. Thierry had once owned a pharmacy business worth over €1 million, which he passed on to his daughter, Claire. He was reportedly not keen on her relationship with Mollier, a man 15 years older than his daughter that he considered beneath her. Thierry's alibi for the day is solid, but the police speculate that he could have hired someone to do the job. In 2014, the theory gained sudden weight with the suicide of a Patrice Menegaldo, an ex-French foreign legionnaire who lived in Eugène, the same town Sylvain Mollier called home. Menegaldo wasn't a stranger to the victim and knew Mollier's partner, Claire Schutz. Police had interviewed Menegaldo in April 2014, but at the time he had not been considered a primary suspect. Still, his apparent suicide just weeks later fuels speculation that the pressure of guilt or fear had pushed him over the edge. The suicide note he left tells otherwise, though. In it, he says that his life had become hell and he could no longer bear the suspicion that lingered around his involvement. To the police, Menegaldo's suicide is better explained through those lenses. This and war-related PTSD and the loss of his child that had over the years put on toll on the poor man's mental health. The vengeful husband theory. Turning back to Mollier, and as if the plot was not thick enough, witnesses report that, prior to meeting Claire, Mollier had had a few affairs with married women in the area, and, weeks prior to his demise, had said quite solemnly, "Don't be surprised if I end up at the end of a shotgun one day." The French authorities look into that too. For a short while, this theory gains traction when they find out that Claire, Mollier's partner, used to be his best friend's wife, a woman he eventually seduced during a business trip in Italy and kept for himself. But that theory also falls flat on its face. The police find no evidence to suggest Claire's ex-husband might have had the means, motive, or opportunity to orchestrate such a killing, let alone the stomach to eliminate an entire family. The lone psychopath theory. Well, the French investigators also consider the possibility that the massacre might have been the work of a lone psychopath. After all, no shooting lacking in motive would be complete without a lone gunman theory. The choice of a Luger, a gun not favoured by professional assassins, could point to a collector, a man obsessed with a past era, reliving fantasies of power through violence. French investigators are not convinced. This theory fails to explain the near-perfect execution of the crime. The killer did not hesitate, did not fumble. As we saw, the attack was swift, controlled. A random madman would have left chaos in his wake. Then there is the location of the hit, not in the middle of a city, but deep in the woods, on a quiet forest road known mostly to locals and hikers. Whoever carried it out didn't need to chase or flee. They were already in position, waiting. To the police, without firm evidence, the theory remains toothless. The xenophobic ex-gendarme theory. One of the earliest leads in the investigation comes from retired British RAF pilot's report of a man seen riding a motorcycle near the crime scene on the day of the killings, a report later confirmed by 2 forest rangers who turned the unknown rider away from a restricted trail. He's described as wearing a distinctive GPA ISR helmet and having a short beard or goatee. These sightings prompt the police to release a composite sketch in 2013. 4,000 cell phone records are analysed to match the cell phone's owners with the photo fit. The sketch bears a striking resemblance to the former municipal police officer, who had been dismissed from his post in June 2013 for his very deep and vocal hatred of foreigners, a xenophobia that came with a violent temper at that. That man is 46 years old, Eric Devuso. In February 2014, that man is arrested in the nearby village of Latwil. His cell phone activity supports his presence around the area of CHEVALINE. Sources tell of a loner who works in Geneva with an obsession with firearms. During a search of his home, police discover a collection of firearms, 40 to be exact, including Second World War-era weapons, the sort of items that align uncomfortably well with the vintage Luger P06 used in the murders. During a police interview, the suspect will go out of his way to impress the detectives about his intimate knowledge of the weapon in question. For a moment, it seems like the investigation may have found its breakthrough. As for motive, the ex-gendarme had been alleged to have scratched cars of foreign tourists. Could such uncontained xenophobia have turned, one Wednesday afternoon, into a frenzied attack against unsuspecting foreign-looking tourists and one inconvenient cyclist witness? That theory is short-lived. The two unknown DNA profiles found in the Al-Hili vehicle doesn't match his. Without forensic evidence to tie him to the scene, he is quickly ruled out, and with good cause, because in 2015, the French authorities traced the motorbike rider, a local businessman from the Rhone Alps region. He tells police he was in the area to go paragliding. His story checks out. He's ruled out as a suspect in 2022. The Iqbal Al-Hili lead theory. Before she became one of the victims in the CHEVALINE massacre, Iqbal Al-Hili, the wife of Saad and mother of Zainab and Zina, had already lived a life full of twists, reinventions, and unanswered questions. Born into a well-off Iraqi family, spent most of her youth in Sweden, before working as a dentist in Dubai. Ambitious, known to have a high IQ and fluency in 8 languages, Iqbal set her sights on America, hoping to start over. In 1999, following an introduction by a friend, Iqbal marries a Southern American contractor named Jim Thompson, under the name Kelly Thompson, just days after arriving in Atlanta. Rumors abound that their marriage is a business arrangement so that Iqbal can get her green card. Be that as it may, Iqbal's American dream quickly fades. Unable to practice dentistry, Iqbal finds herself doing menial work, her professional frustration growing. Tearful and afraid, she tells her sister-in-law she has 2 weeks to leave. Offering no explanation beyond a vague, unsettling, "They are asking me to go," she leaves the United States never to return. On 5 September 2012, the very day Iqbal is murdered in France, Jim Thompson dies suddenly in Mississippi. Overwhelmed by grief, his sister Judith refuses an autopsy at the time, something that she would bitterly regret. Because you see, years later, Judith begins to suspect that her brother might have been poisoned. These suspicions reaffirmed when a mysterious visitor appeared at her door, someone whose identity she promised to protect, and informed her that Iqbal had once been trapped in a sophisticated extortion network, drugging wealthy men to obtain sensitive financial information, which she then passed on to unknown handlers. According to him, Iqbal wanted out, and that, Judith believes, is what got her killed. Her brother Jim, believed to be in the know, she says, was silenced too. She shares her suspicions and some supporting documents with the British police. The French authorities request that the body of James Dudley be exhumed in a bid to revisit the cause of his death, but the FBI refuses. Not enough probable cause. With no autopsy, no toxicology report, and no charges, the link between Iqbal's previous life and the CHEVALINE massacre remains unproven. Years pass, and the questions arising from that bloody afternoon remain frozen in time. The police reconstruct the crime, again and again, trying to understand what truly happened on that forest road. The cold case unit of Nanterre takes over, reviewing old evidence, interviewing new witnesses, re-interviewing old ones, always in the hope to uncover a missed connection, a half-remembered clue, a more promising theory, but nothing. The case resurfaces in the media from time to time, with new revelations never leading to any significant breakthrough. And so we arrive at the end of the road, but not at the truth. If this story leaves you frustrated, you're not alone. No charges, no arrests, no justice. The CHEVALINE massacre remains to this day unsolved. This in itself is a complete paradox, because it is a case that does not suffer from a lack of clues, but rather from too many. Too many threads, too many theories, too many maybes, and not enough proof. This time, I have to admit, I'm drawing a blank. None of the 8 theories for motives we've covered has convinced me one way or another. The sibling rivalry theory is tempting because of the very publicized dislike the brothers had for each other and the calls to Romania that abruptly stopped after the killings. But given the family's international business connection, maybe we're clutching at straws. The family feud in Iraq theory doesn't have much in it in my view. Too speculative. I've got to say that the Iqbal lead is intriguing. What are the chances of a formerly married couple dying in different circumstances on the very same day, 4,500 miles apart? But why would the extortionists wait 12 years to eliminate witnesses? In an interview with a British tabloid journalist, Zaid has expressed his very firm belief that Sylvain Mollier was the intended victim. As he's put it, the weapon is local, so must be the murderer. What do you think? Is he onto something, or is it just a clever ploy to deflect attention from himself? The Sylvain Mollier theories are, in my view, too messy. An assassination orchestrated by a father-in-law disapproving of his relationship with Claire Schutz, leading to the elimination of an entire family to remove witnesses. Kind of overkill, don't you think? What do you make of the theory of some trigger-happy loner that would overspill his hate on an entire family, including children? The CHEVALINE massacre is by far the most difficult story I have had to research in the short life of this channel. Believe it or not, more theories abound. Theories I have found too fanciful to be worth mentioning here, like the one focusing on William Brett Martin, the British ex-RAF man who, according to some, was treated too early as a witness and not a suspect. Theories about the dark green 4x4 reported by multiple witnesses but whose driver was never identified. The truth is that short of a deathbed confession, a drunken boast, or someone somewhere growing a conscience, this sordid affair may never come to be resolved. Let's close this episode with a thought for Zainab and Zina, 2 young survivors, marked forever by a trauma no child should endure. Heroes in their own quiet way. They live with questions no one should have to carry. Were their parents the targets of this so-called bad man? And if so, why? We may not have answers, but we hold space for their pain, and we wish them peace.